The House Education Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Colazar.
Here.
Representatives Churches.
Present.
Shannon.
Present.
Weiss. Glanville.
Present.
Conlon.
Present.
Edwards. Wagella.
Here.
Song. Green. Here. Markkinen.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Wenzel. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair Churches moves to approve the minutes of the June 4th meeting without objection, so ordered. We are continuing testimony today on Senate Bills 567 and 568. Much like last week, I am asking, well, actually, presenters, I'm only giving you 5 minutes because 5 minutes each because we have a full boat of people wishing to testify, which means if you can be less than 5 minutes, that is very much appreciated. I would like to try to get to everybody. No promises, as we do have a hard stop at 10:20. So with that, we are going to get rolling on it right away. And our first people that we have up, I would ask that you come up together. That way the transitions can be faster as well. We have, and if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize. I have Henri Hagland and his mother, Kathleen, Caroline Kaganoff. Did I get it right? How do you say it?
Good, you did good.
Well, I appreciate it. And then Dion Butler. And Dion, you turned behind like you had somebody behind you. So I don't know if anyone else was coming up. We can just we'll fill the table. All right. Well, so with that, Henri, we are going to start with you whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Henri Hagland. I'm in 9th grade and I have dyslexia. I'm here to ask you to support these bills to help students who have dyslexia and have a hard time learning to read. When I was younger, I never wanted to read or write. Actually, I wanted to read and write because I liked school, but I just couldn't. In 3rd grade, the teachers wanted us to read out loud, and I was afraid I would make mistakes or take too long. They didn't give me good reading strategies to sound out words. They said, go back and slide through the word, which didn't really help. Because I wasn't sure what sounds the A made. Was it a long A or short A? They only had me read a book and talk about what I remember from the book. But it was hard to remember since I couldn't read all the words in the book. Teachers didn't spend a lot of time on writing and spelling. I only remember learning the Magic-E rule. I wasn't able to read long words. While I was in elementary school, I sometimes felt out of place, almost as if I didn't belong in class. I always wondered what it would be like if I didn't have dyslexia, or if I could read just as well as my peers around me. I would say negative things to myself, such as, oh, I'm so stupid, and why can't I read like everyone else? I used to avoid reading and writing by asking for bathroom breaks and trying to visit other teachers. At the end of 5th grade, I was not at grade level in reading and writing. They wanted to stop giving me extra help and wanted me to use technology tools to help me read and write, but not help me truly be independent. Thankfully, my parents did not give up on me. I was given a wonderful tutor outside of school who had opened so many paths to success and taught me the right way to read, write, and spell. She taught me letter patterns, and with learning these new ways to decipher and decode words I never knew. I am not as afraid to read and write, though it is still a struggle and I need extra help. I wish I was brought to this tutor sooner so I could have received the help that I needed to make my goals possible. If I had been given this help earlier, when I was younger, I think many things would be easier because the struggle continues every day at school. Please pass these bills so schools will identify students with decoding problems when they are younger, so they can get the proper help that they need. Otherwise, it will affect them for the rest of their lives as it affects me.
I'm Henri's mom, and I'm so proud of him.
I would like to make a couple of points in the time remaining. We were present last week for the committee hearing. We both learned even more about the legislative process since the last time Henri testified. In the car on the way home, Henri asked me, "Why are people opposed to this? I don't understand. I just don't understand why people don't want to help kids read, and why is this taking so long?" There was a lot of back and forth about the words in the bill, should and must. I, as a teacher, understand that schools get married to products, systems, and procedures. However, I am frightened that you would change these words for kids exhibiting decoding challenges. Put simply, the school system should have taught my child to read. School systems must teach children to read. Should did not make reading happen when and how it should have. It will continue to be this way if you are not precise in the language. Lastly, dyslexia is a learning disability, an invisible learning disability. Legislation to make changes in the law have been in the works for almost 5 years. Would you take 5 years to help students that are physically disabled? I ask you to look deep inside and try to imagine your life differently with reading difficulties and the many aspects of your life that it affects. Reading text, grocery shopping, traffic signs, learning a second language as a state mandate. As a Spanish teacher, I see the frustration of students trying to learn a second language when they do not have the skills to read or write in their own language. Reading challenges have a negative impact on a person's entire trajectory. I'm grateful that Henri finally found someone to help him. The struggle has been real, and as he stated, it continues. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let the whole table go, and then if committee members have questions after that, we will have that point.
Perfect. My name is Caroline Kaganoff, and I am the mom of a child who struggles with literacy. My child is currently in 9th grade. He was diagnosed with dyslexia in 1st grade, but not given evidence-based structured literacy intervention. Instead, to figure out words on the page, he was asked, "What word makes sense there?" teaching him to guess. When my child was in 5th grade, while his peers were reading to learn new information, my child was struggling to learn to read. So new information was not being attained, and the gap continued to widen. As his parents, we have paid extensively for expensive outside intervention in structured literacy. But at school, he was still being instructed to look at the word and see what makes sense there, or read ahead and go back and what word would make sense. With this continued ineffective instruction, breaking the bad guessing habit is so hard to do. When he now sees a multi-syllable word, he continues, his first instinct is to do what he was taught in school and guess. Let me give you an example of why this is detrimental. In a recent grade level history article, he was asked to assess what was going on the page. He read, instead of reading legislation, he read legislator. Instead of reading Senate, he read section. I have it here if anyone would like to see it. All these errors made sense in the sentence, but they didn't portray what the author intended, so his comprehension suffered. So the what makes sense approach didn't work. When I read to him, I give him explicit instruction not to guess. I say, you know how to decode. Use your sound knowledge words. Break down the syllables. With these explicit instructions, his reading accuracy improves. Teaching kids to guess words based on context is a disservice. Dyslexia is not rare. It affects a startlingly large portion of our population. 1 in 5 Americans have some form of dyslexia. In an average-sized classroom, that equates to 5 students struggling to access the curriculum. If you cannot read, you cannot access the curriculum in a meaningful way, and that has potentially devastating outcomes. While dyslexia impacts learning, it is not an issue of intelligence. People with dyslexia are just as intelligent as their peers. We can make a difference if we identify children with dyslexic traits early and get them the evidence-based intervention they need in structured literacy. If we wait to intervene, we have many more issues to address. We have children who feel inferior due to their inability to read, when in reality, if given structured literacy intervention, they would be readers. We have children with behavioral issues because it's easier to be the bad kid than the kid who can't read. And we have children who are behind in the curriculum because they couldn't access it, because they couldn't read. So essentially, we have a knowledge gap. Let's ensure we get these children what they need now when it's most beneficial to both their education and their self-esteem. I have been talking to Senator Irwin since April 2016. That's a long time. For the need for literacy bills in Michigan. In that time, Michigan has fallen from 32nd in 2019 to 43rd in fourth grade reading scores on the 2022 National Assessment for Educational Progress. That puts our state at the 7th worst in the nation for fourth grade reading scores. We are failing our children. These literacy bills will help improve those numbers. These bills will ensure appropriate assessment, not more assessment. We want to give the teachers the correct tools. I am not asking you to change this for my child. He will be long graduated before anything is truly different. But I implore you to recognize the sense of urgency in making change happen now. It's time we stopped letting 1 in 5 children fall through the cracks. The ability to access the curriculum in Michigan shouldn't depend on your parents' income. It shouldn't depend on your parents' ability to fight for the correct intervention. Reading rates across the school district are skewed by parents paying for outside intervention, but a child's ability to read should not depend on their zip code. The public school should be a safety net. As a state, we are required to provide a free and appropriate public education for every child. We need to ensure that every child can read at a proficient level. Let's give these children a chance to show their true potential. Thank you to this Education Committee for taking my concerns and working towards improving literacy in our state.
Let me tell you about this little black boy that did everything he could to get his family out the ghetto. This little black boy went to school every single day. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. This little black boy knew he wasn't smart like his classmates because he couldn't read or spell. This little black boy was a brave soul. Even though he knew he couldn't read every day in class, he would still try. His classmates, his friends laughed at him, calling him dumb and stupid. He never gave up because his grandma wouldn't let him. This little black boy dreamed of going to the NFL so he can get his family out the ghetto. He played 1 year of football, and a bunch of college coaches started offering him scholarships. He learned that he needed to go to college in order to go to the NFL. So he threw his NFL dreams away and turned to the streets. His grandma found out, and that's when his grandma found out that he was trying to be this street thug, and she knocked some sense into his head. This little black boy graduated from high school reading at a 4th grade level. He went to Central Michigan University. This little black boy is now a young man. This young man thought that he could use the same strategy that he used in high school and college by going to class every day, participating in class, and turning in his schoolwork, no matter if it was right or wrong. That's when he experienced one of the worst times in his college career. The professor told this young man in front of the whole auditorium that he wasn't going to graduate from college or pass his class. That's when he called his grandma. His grandma told him to ask for help. So the next day, he went into the disability office and received the help he needed. On the football field, this young man tried studying the playbook, but he was getting headaches. He couldn't understand what was going on in his brain. He couldn't read the concepts or go in the right direction. He struggled with the playbook all the way until his senior year in college. This young man graduated from college, reading at a 4th grade level. He persevered through all the pain and the struggle, and he made it all the way to his dreams and goals. He signed a contract with the Detroit Lions. That's when he learned the Detroit Lions playbook was much harder than the college playbook. This young man was doing everything he could to fight for a spot on the roster. The Detroit Lions kept releasing him and signing him back to the team. The Detroit Lions thought maybe he would finally open the playbook, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was he couldn't read. During that time, his grandma passed away and his mother. This young man got a call from his agent, and his agent said, "There's a few NFL teams still wanting you to try out." This young man realized that no matter what team he went to, there was still going to be a playbook. There was still going to be some reading. So he walked away from football. During the pandemic, his wife told him that she was pregnant with their first child. That's when he made up his mind to take control of his reading problem. He started working with his tutor, and his tutor introduced him into the Orton-Gillingham method. For 3 years straight, he's been training hard to learn how to read. Now he know how to decode words. His big accomplishment came true, to read to his daughter. My name is Dion Butler, and I am that little black boy that struggled to read and write all my life. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody here for sharing your stories. Do members of the committee have any questions? Representative Edwards.
Not necessarily a question, but from one little black girl to a little black boy, I thank you for sharing your story. And to the other young man next to you, thank you both for sharing it and advocating for other people who look like us. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Other members, questions? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in your testimony. And thank you also, Henri, for coming back in the second week and missing more school. Oh, makes me feel better. Okay, next up we have Greg Nyen, who will be, he is representing Marquette Alger Risa. He will be testifying virtually, and he wishes to speak opposing the bill.
Good morning, Chair Colazar and esteemed committee members. My name is Dr. Gregory Nyen, and I'm here to express my concerns about the proposed dyslexia support and reading intervention legislation in its current form. As a school psychologist and special education director with extensive experience, I understand the challenges faced by educators and the need for effective support for students with dyslexia. I am also acutely aware of the sensitivity required when delivering difficult diagnoses to parents and guardians. While the intentions behind this bill are commendable and on point, it is crucial to recognize the potential adverse effects on teachers, the increased likelihood of litigation due to noncompliance, and most of all, its structural faults. One major concern is the undue stress on teachers, especially special education teachers. The proposed bill's requirements for specific assessments and interventions without providing necessary support will only add to their burden. This increased accountability can lead to stress, burnout, and job dissatisfaction among educators at a time when more teachers are leaving the profession than entering. Per MDE guidance from February 22, a district's obligation to refer a student for an initial special education evaluation is triggered when there is, quote, reason to suspect or believe, end quote, that the student may have a disability and needs special education services. Potential red flags include academic concerns such as a history of academic issues and/or poor progress on standardized tests. While the bill aims to, quote, support all students, end quote, it is likely to trigger our child find requirement for some students, making special education an essential part of this discussion. Additionally, the proposed legislation is overdependent on a functional multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, a framework that is currently optional in the special education identification process. Consequently, many districts do not have a truly functional MTSS framework. This presents a significant weakness, further burdening educators and failing to provide necessary student interventions, increasing the likelihood of litigation. The legislation's reliance on specific assessments and interventions raises significant concerns about compliance and potential litigation. Similar laws in states like Connecticut have led to wide variations in compliance due to differences in infrastructure and funding, such as the difference between urban and rural districts in our state. Without clear guidance, educators must navigate complex requirements on their own. Furthermore, the mandated screening assessments have proven inadequate in identifying students with dyslexia and other reading difficulties accurately. This inadequacy not only fails to support students, but also opens the door to legal challenges. Schools may face lawsuits if they are perceived as failing to comply with the legislation or if the mandated tools do not yield the promised results. Instead of imposing additional requirements and accountability measures, we should focus on building the capacity of teachers and school leaders by providing ongoing collaborative professional learning opportunities that align with curricular goals and instructional priorities. School leaders must be equipped to align all elements of a school's infrastructure, ensuring coherence and effectiveness in instructional practices. High-quality universal pre-K programs for all 4-year-olds and high-risk 3-year-olds have shown promise in preventing reading difficulties, further emphasizing the importance of focusing on capacity building rather than imposing more requirements. In conclusion, while the goal of improving reading outcomes for students with dyslexia is laudable, the proposed legislation in its current form will be difficult to implement with fidelity, leaving teachers vulnerable to increased stress and school districts open to increased litigation. I urge the committee to slow down the process, consider the outcomes of those who have gone before us, and ensure we get our legislation right. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, ask that you all come up together. We have Dr. Audra Melton, Steve Keskis, 2 for 2, and Ben Locke. And whoever would like to kick it off can go when ready. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Audra Melton, and I'm a recently retired teacher and administrator from the Troy School District. I also live in Troy and have a dyslexic son that just graduated from the district. I am sharing my experience from Troy because I want to make sure you understand that reading proficiency is a serious concern, even in a top-ranked district in the state. Despite guidance from the MDE on appropriate screeners for reading, Troy has ignored this guidance and chooses to use reading screeners that do not pick up on the characteristics of dyslexia. Despite the most current research on effective reading instruction, Troy chooses to use Tier 1 instruction that is not in line with the science of reading and has proven ineffective for students with dyslexia and other reading challenges. Despite research showing that interventions based in the science of reading are the most effective for struggling readers and those with dyslexia, Troy chooses to use outdated interventions that are ineffective for these students. The school board and central office administration in Troy believe that having 66% of all third graders proficient on the 22-23 M-STEP is reason to maintain the status quo because it's better than the county and state averages. While the Troy School District Administration does not present subgroup information publicly or to their school board, the subgroup statistics I am sharing are available on myschooldata.org. These are the percentages of third grade students that are not M-STEP proficient in reading. Black students, 61%. Economically disadvantaged students, 59%. English learners, 47%. And students with disabilities, 77% not proficient in Troy. For over a decade, parents have requested changes to instruction, assessments, and interventions to help their children and have consistently been told no. Parents of struggling students are sent away and forced to look outside for help. That help for my son came in the form of an Orton Gillingham reading tutoring and came at a cost of $60,000. What has been created in Troy, and likely in many cities across Michigan, is a case of haves and have-nots, because districts can choose to keep using ineffective screeners, instructional practices, and interventions. Parents must pay for the instruction their children need. For parents that don't have the money, their kids continue to go down a spiral of learning loss as content reading complexity increases and their ability to engage decreases. Simply providing guidance to do the right thing has not worked. Not even in seemingly high-performing districts like Troy. We need these bills with their current language intact to ensure students are provided with the screening and instruction they need to become successful readers. Thank you.
And committee. Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share maybe a little bit of hope, because it sounds like a lot of sort of doom and gloom. My name is Dr. Stephen Keskis, and my role is the Director of Grants and Academic Innovation at the Stockbridge Community Schools. I've been working with teachers and districts to implement structured literacy programming over the past 10 years in multiple contexts, and I've seen firsthand its impact on children and adults. Over the past 25 years, I've served as a middle school and high school English teacher, building administrator, and central office administrator. And I'm here today to share my experience in solving problems with reading in schools from a district perspective. When I was the assistant superintendent in the Clio area schools for 8 years, we implemented several balanced literacy approaches in an attempt to improve reading outcomes. We implemented reading recovery, leveled literacy, and other whole word or whole language approaches in an attempt to increase students' reading abilities. We made some gains with some students, however, we were not successful with many students. I said to my middle school teacher, Title I teacher, we've got to do something different. Like, this isn't working. We landed on Orton Gillingham training because it was vastly different from what we had been doing for years in the district. After that training, she was on fire with excitement about how about the new information, its possibilities. She implemented this strategy with the children in a Title I setting, and these children made gains that they hadn't made in a very long time. Some of these students had reading recovery when they were in first grade, which affirmed research surrounding reading recovery's short-term success. We then implemented the training in our elementary schools with paraprofessionals as part of our MTSS system, and children made gains again, and teachers were curious as to what we were doing differently. And then we expanded the training to teaching staff at the elementary level. Training was optional for staff, but when teachers saw initial results, more teachers wanted the training too. Training gave teachers a feeling of empowerment and efficacy. Our results included a decrease in special ed numbers and improvements in student reading abilities. Funding came from Children's Choice Initiative and 31A at-risk money, which were both supported by the state. In my last district as Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, I saw the district shifting to structured literacy training with 35D money using Orton Gillingham and letters training. Last year was the first year of implementation, and they were seeing improvements. Theirs isn't my story to tell, but they have recently presented their results to Ingham County coaches, and what was shared was more than impressive, and that district has an extremely high number of English learners. Currently, as the Director of Grants and Academic Innovation at Stockbridge, we've trained several teachers in Orton Gillingham and letters. The challenge has been they want another colleague to do the same training with them so they can collaborate. It's hard to do this kinds of change on your own. So thank you for the 35J funds, because our intent next year is to train teachers district-wide, pre-K through 5, to implement Orton Gillingham through the Institute for Multisensory Education, and then learn how to best scope and sequence this in our learning community. The challenge is that you can't intervene your way out of a Tier 1 problem. So we can't just continue to provide tutoring and interventions when all children need this kind of learning. It's not like it hurts or structured literacy harms children that aren't. We know that 1 in 5 of our children potentially have dyslexia, and the challenge that I see isn't one of fear of being sued because we might find children that might need additional support. My fear is that we don't find these children and they never get the support that they need. Last week I heard some of our representatives' concerns about notions about being overly prescriptive, the roles of colleges and universities, teacher scarcity, and who might deliver the support to teachers and schools. The letters train that everyone has supported has a course called Letters for Administrators. Within that course, the authors talk about the role of building and district administrators supporting science of reading practices to ensure sustainability. Part of that implementation, science-driven research focuses on every teacher and stakeholder being trained in science of reading to create a common language, materials, and improve collaboration. When we implement new programming, it takes time and commitment from not only teachers, but also district decision makers to ensure resources are dedicated to supporting our teachers. So the prescriptive nature of some of this training is intentional to ensure stability or sustainability and reliability. I agree that the roles of colleges and universities ensuring structural literacy is very important. Often teachers come out of the college / student teaching setting learning several best practices, but once they land a teaching job, they find out that the district context may use different practices from what they were told. It's hard to change a K-12 environment.
I'm
and
sorry, that
professors-
is time.
All right. There's more in the written part of it, but I wanted to answer some of your concerns from last week.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Good morning, representatives, and thank you for allowing me to testify in favor of Senate Bills 567 and 568. My name is Ben Locke, and I'm the Michigan Executive Director of Teach Plus, an education nonprofit that seeks to empower excellent, experienced, and diverse teachers to take leadership over key policy and practice issues that advance equity, opportunity, and student success. I'm also a former middle school and high school teacher who cringes at the memory of how I used to teach students reading skills. Currently, I work with teachers who have been advocating for these bills as they work their way through the legislative process. Those teachers have put in countless hours analyzing the bills, reaching out to lawmakers such as yourselves, suggesting improvements, writing op-eds, persuading stakeholders, and giving public testimony before the Senate Education Committee. The teachers I work with see why these bills are so desperately needed to help their struggling readers. Shannon, a third grade Spanish immersion teacher, felt heartbroken for her student Jared, who is still reading at a kindergarten level when he reached her third grade class. It wasn't until Shannon received letters training, the type of training that more teachers will receive through these bills, that she understood how a child learns to read. This training came too late to help her student Jared. Alyssa, an elementary special education teacher I work with, told me about her student John, who sees the word bat, says b-at, and then says dig. John's brain is unable to connect these sounds, but without sufficient screeners or evidence-based supports in place, John wasn't getting the individualized instructions targeted at his specific needs. Or take Carrie, a fourth grade teacher who is desperate to help her student Allie. Carrie felt like Mary Poppins, elbow deep in her carpet bag, pulling out every trick, every game, every book that she could think of to help Allie learn to read. Carrie's search for the right instructional methods felt so desperate because without proper support and training, it was unclear to her which methods were most effective. Luckily, Senate Bill 567 makes clear which instructional methods are appropriate within the narrow context of teaching struggling readers to decode, and it makes clear which instructional methods are not appropriate. Section 24 of the bill provides clarity to teachers like Carrie so that she doesn't have to scramble around in her bag of tricks looking for the best instructional methods to help Allie learn to decode. Beyond the individual experiences of these three teachers from different parts of the state, data show why we must pass these bills. Michigan ranks 7th worst in the nation for fourth grade reading. Michigan's reading scores are the lowest that they've been in 30 years. According to the NCTQ report on Teacher Prep Review, Michigan's teacher preparation programs rank below the national average for the number of components its reading programs adequately address. I'm concerned that if we fail to pass these bills, students like Jared, John, and Allie won't get the help they need. I'm concerned that if we water down the language in these bills, clear guidance will become mere suggestions, which provide no incentive for the system to change. Why change if you don't have to? I'm concerned that if we wait until all schools are fully staffed to screen students for dyslexia and provide them with evidence-based supports, thousands of students will continue to slip through the cracks. But right now, my hope outweighs my concern. I'm hopeful that you will vote yes on these bills so that we can change the educational trajectory of students like Jared, John, and Allie for the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keskis, I have a question for you. You talked about how next year you plan at Stockbridge to implement systems to help students with dyslexia with funding. So now my question is, if this bill were not to pass,
I would do it anyway.
but so you still have that ability. It's just it would be limited obviously to Stockbridge because the rest of the state doesn't have that requirement.
We've been waiting on this for 10 years. Like, our kids can't wait. There's not enough time. They don't have time. I don't want any kid to come to school and feel terribly because they can't read or feel less than. I support the bills because I think it's the right thing to do for everyone, but I might be an anomaly, or a few of us might be an anomaly.
So essentially what you're saying is you believe so strongly in this, you'll just trudge forward even if the state doesn't.
I'll figure out a way. I'll go ask if I needed money for training, I'd go ask a company to make a donation. We have to do something.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, we have Dr. Amy Campbell, who is president of the Michigan Association of School Psychologists. And we have Caroline Stout, who is the MTSS coordinator for Saline Schools. Oh, we don't have, okay. Okay, then Dr. Campbell, it's all you.
Yes, thank you for asking us to, allowing us to be here today. My name's Dr. Amy Campbell. I'm the president of the Michigan Association of School Psychologists. We support this bill. We have been in support of this bill for several years. I want to just briefly highlight some of the reasons why we feel very strongly that these bills are needed in our state. Number one, we need better screening tools. Currently, all districts already complete benchmarking for reading skills 3 times a year. That already exists. Unfortunately, what we have is that many districts will select tools that are not reliable or valid or able to identify students who have true reading challenges. So what this bill does is it doesn't say you must use this specific screening tool. It says your screening tool has to address a variety of these, different issues. You have to assess a child's decoding. There's several screening tools that are available that would meet the criteria for this particular bill. This makes it, helps schools not do more testing, but to just get better at testing. Second, we desperately need evidence-based interventions for children who are struggling with reading, particularly in the area of decoding. A lot of the research that has come out, this is not new. We've known about this for some time, that kids who struggle with decoding and with word identification need to be taught phonics systematically. That is obviously not the only thing that we need for kids. Reading is complex. We know that there are many other components to intervention. These bills provide, although some have described them as prescriptive, there's a wide range of interventions, teaching strategies that would be allowed under this bill. It does not select a single intervention or a single approach. You have to teach phonics. There are lots of different interventions that can do that, so schools can figure out what best meets the needs of our particular students, and also help, what is our staff? What are our staff's strengths? What do they, what is gonna work? So there is flexibility. Finally, I do want to clarify that these bills are not related to diagnosing dyslexia. With these bills, we are able to identify kids early on. We are not identifying dyslexia. However, in schools, and this oftentimes is a language difference, it's sort of semantics. Children who may or may not be identified with dyslexia through a private school or a private evaluator, they may receive services in special education under a specific learning disability. Not all children will meet, who are diagnosed with dyslexia, will meet criteria for special education services. This is another issue that we would love to talk about legislators with, because I believe school psychologists oftentimes get frustrated with the current process for that. But this does not really deal with diagnosing dyslexia. We're simply looking for characteristics of kids that if we intervene early, hopefully we can catch them up. And for some kids, we may not be able to, and then that's when we would look at special education identification.
Thank you. And we do have a member question from Representative Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. You mentioned that districts are choosing some tools that just, I guess, aren't effective. What are specifically these tools that districts are choosing? What are they by name?
Tools that are not effective or tools that are?
Yeah, you said that districts are choosing tools that aren't effective screeners.
Yeah.
What are those tools, I guess? What are the tools by name?
Yeah, a pretty common tool that we see in schools is the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment system. It's very common. It's a pretty comprehensive assessment. What it actually does is sort of gives kids a reading level, A through, whatever. So you may, if anybody has a child in a school, you may have been given their letter. What we have found out about the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment system is that those reading levels are not predictive of later reading achievement. So if I do a reading level on a kindergartner or a first grader, it's sort of like 50-50, right? Maybe they'll do okay or maybe they won't. So I understand that many people may find value in us using those tools. And we're not saying that you can't, but the tool that tool is not going to accurately identify children who are in need of additional support. So you would need to use something else to make sure that we're catching kids pretty early.
Thank you. Any other member
Yeah,
questions?
thank you for that.
Any other member questions? Representative Johnson.
What are some other obvious ways we can improve overall learning, overall reading, since we have such a huge problem in the state of Michigan? Such as, do you think classroom size, teacher-student ratio might assist? And maybe you have some other ideas as well.
Yeah, that's a very large question. There's a lot. But yes, one of the things that we know is yes, classroom size is very important. However, just reducing classroom size without providing training to teachers on how to implement structured, systematic literacy practices, I don't think you'll see the effect. There's lots of things that can go into establishing. We know for kids, being in a safe, positive, predictable environment is necessary for them to learn. However, given all of that, we still need to make sure that we are teaching reading, particularly at Tier 1, in a way that is backed by scientific evidence.
Thank you. Other member questions? Once, twice, sold. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next up, we have Rebecca Irby from New Detroit. And we also have Marsha Howell Chance, the Executive Director of the Michigan Dyslexia Institute.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. Thank you for the time today. My name is Rebecca Irby, and I am the founder and president of Peak Institute, an NGO in special consulting status with the United Nations and winner of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize as a coalition member of ICANN International. I'm also the director of transformational change at New Detroit, a racial justice organization. I'm here today to lend my voice and support to the legislation on dyslexia, Senate Bills 567 and 568. The assessment and the screening purposes in identifying pupils with dyslexia. It's critical to student success, and I'm going to share a very brief story from my own experience as to why I believe these bills are critical. Having severe dyslexia myself, I can attest to the difficulty of navigating the education system, especially when there are no accommodations in place. When I was in elementary school, which was in the 80s, there were no assessments for dyslexia. There were also very different ways that special education was administered. I'm coming from the state of New Jersey, so I moved here recently and was horrified to see that there were no testing in place for dyslexia. New Jersey is one of the top states right now, but it's had dyslexia screening in place for a number of years. And my mother was one of the parents who advocated for and pushed to make sure that dyslexia screening was in place. Because when I was in middle school, I was going to be placed in a tiered system on the special education track, which would have put me in line to graduate with a certificate of completion and not a high school diploma. Needless to say, when my mother found this out, she was outraged. She fought with the district, she began advocating, working on legislation. However, the school did not relent, and she ended up homeschooling me for middle school. This was an intensive intervention, one that most students are not able to afford or have the ability to engage in. I know that that intervention had a direct impact on my trajectory, also on what I've been able to accomplish in my life. I had the ability and the fortunate position to have this accommodation. If this was not in place, I would not be sitting here today. I'm also positive that the fight my mother fought to ensure that dyslexia screening was implemented in New Jersey has had a dramatic impact, not only on the fellow students that I grew up with, but also now seeing that New Jersey is one of the top states in reading literacy. And I implore you to vote yes on SB 567 and 568. This bill does not only support students, but it also supports teachers and districts in providing the resources necessary. As we've heard from a number of the other administrators here, it is critical to have these tests in place, and not just having them in place, but having the support necessary to implement and to get the training necessary in order to see this move forward. I thank you for your time and consideration.
I'm Marsha Chance. I am the executive director of the Michigan Dyslexia Institute, but I also want to share that I'm here looking through different lenses. I am a retired 32-year public school teacher, and I also am the mother of 2 grown dyslexic children, and I have a sister who has dyslexia. It's a lovely coincidence that I'm sitting here with Rebecca, because I also want to tell you about my mom. This is my mom, and if she weren't 91, I would have her here with me today. But my mom, who was a public school teacher here in Lansing at Pattengill, had my younger sister who was in 5th grade and could not read. We're in an excellent school system. They pretty much told her she would never accomplish this goal. My mom learned about Orton-Gillingham method, my sister learned to read, and my mom founded the Michigan Dyslexia Institute in 1982 with the goal of teaching teachers how children learn to read and changing the way schools teach kids to read so that children didn't need to struggle like my sister. It's great my sister learned to read, but you know, when you learn to read at 5th, 6th, 7th grade, you're never really quite the same again, you know? She continues to struggle with self-esteem and confidence. She tried college 3 times, finally got through at 35 because she didn't have the confidence that she could do that. And the longer that we wait for these changes to be made, the more citizens of Michigan you're gonna have who are in that kind of boat. She is a very bright, intelligent woman, and she could contribute so much more had she not started life off with these negative experiences. The other thing I want to really make clear about my mom is she knew there were too many people with dyslexia to tutor. You don't have enough tutors. And the change has to happen in the schools. I've seen very little change in my 32 years in public education about dyslexia, with maybe one. When I started teaching, they didn't even acknowledge dyslexia exists. So I think we're at least to a place where people are saying it exists. But there have been several times over the 42 years since Michigan Dyslexia Institute started advocating for dyslexia that legislation has been in front of the state government, and it has never passed. So it has always been left to the school districts to make the decision to make these changes, and they have not. Mr. Keskis talked about he's going to do it no matter what. You know why? Because he knows about dyslexia. He's one of the few administrators who is knowledgeable about this topic. When you hear questions from the naysayers about this legislation, I would have the first question to them be, what do you know about dyslexia? Have you been trained in Norton Gillingham? Has your school ever attempted to use it in a systematic way, not just train one teacher here, two teachers there? We have trained through the Institute over 1,250 teachers in the last 4 years through line item 35D. It's the only money you've had at all on dyslexia in the budget, and it's currently not there. So I can say that people who are worried you're not going to fund it, that could still be a problem. So I hope you look at putting that 35D money in so we can continue to train teachers. We have not had one teacher say anything in all our written feedback except this has changed our lives. This has changed our ability. We get it now. We get what to do to go into our class, make a difference, and change the way they're teaching. The district Mr. Keskis spoke about is my former district, and they have entire school buildings now trained, utilizing structured reading approaches, and it is already making a difference in just the second year. There were a few things last week that were mentioned I want to quickly address. This concept that research is going to change, I believe that is a falsehood. The research in science of reading started in 1930s. In 1997 through 2000, National Reading Panel, you've probably all heard about.
I'm sorry, Ms. Chance, that is 5 minutes.
Okay.
Do members have any questions for our group? Seeing no questions, thank you very much. Next up, we have a 6th grader, Mateo Lopez. I once taught 6th grade. It's a great age.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Mateo Lopez. I've just graduated the 5th grade, and I have dyslexia, and it's not fun. So I'm here to support Bill 567 and 568. My dyslexia journey started when I was in the 2nd grade. I just got the news that I had dyslexia and I need an IEP. Now, if you don't know what dyslexia is or an IEP, then you're just like me, because I didn't know what dyslexia or an IEP meant either. To put it short, dyslexia is a reading disability, and an IEP is where I go to a different classroom with a different teacher to try to help me learn how to read. It started with only just a few kids, but now there's so many that I can't even count. My teachers tried their best to help me, but they didn't know how to. Then the ESSER funds came in. My local district immediately started paying for all of us to go to tutoring at a little place called Brain Spring Tutoring Center. I was put with a tutor who taught me phonics first. My tutor's name is Olivia, or as I like to call her, Miss Olivia. I started seeing Miss Olivia in my 4th grade year. I started seeing her twice a week. Olivia knows everything about dyslexia and how to teach kids who have dyslexia. The more and more I saw her, the more and more my reading skills grew. By the end of 4th grade, I could proudly say I went up 2 grade levels in reading. So in 6 months of phonics first, I learned 2 years of reading. I kept seeing my tutor through the 5th grade, and now I can proudly say that I no longer have an IEP and that I've graduated my IEP. I couldn't have done it without the help of my mom, the help of my teachers, the help of the funds, and the help of my tutor. These funds helped me and many other students, but there's still students out there struggling from dyslexia. My hope is that every kid who has dyslexia can get help in their classroom every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mateo. Any questions for Mateo? Very nice job. Thank you. Okay, also, I just want to remind people who are coming up to testify as well that if you do get the 5-minute limit, you still want to submit your testimony in writing. We can still make sure that is on the record for you as well. Next up, we have Regina Kolarczyk. Did I say that right?
I was not going to testify.
Oh, sorry. It said wishing to speak. So you're good? Okay.
I'm just here to support the
Okay.
bill.
Will you support the bill? We have that on the record. Next, we have a not wishing to speak supporting the bill. Julie Stalker she's a Rochester Dyslexia parent advocate. I might as well just read these all in right now. Not wishing to speak supporting the bill. Jeff Cobb, Michigan Partnership for Equity and Opportunity. Okay, back to the wishing to speaks. We have from the Michigan Department of Education, Dr. Sue Carnell, Dr. Jen Saylor, and Dr. Kim St. Martin. They spoke last week. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. Do we have absent? Do we have absent members? Okay. Seeing no absent members. Okay. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned. Oh, did you have? I don't have a card. All right. You can come on. We have time. Hit the button. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Susan Schmidt, and I'm a veteran educator, retired now. In 1979, I graduated from a Big Ten university in elementary education and finished a master's degree with coursework with learning disabled students. I can still remember sitting in meetings with parents when I began teaching, telling them I would do everything I could to make sure their child was going to learn to read. The truth was, the knowledge and instructional strategies I had were inadequate. Spin forward to 1998, my school district allowed me 5 professional days to obtain training of my choice. I heard about this thing called dyslexia, so I signed up for training at the Michigan Dyslexia Institute. I was teaching on the south side of Lansing at the time. The training totally changed the trajectory of my practice. I remember at the end of the first day of training, I was stunned. Although I had taken reading methods in college, the training I was receiving at MDI and structured literacy was helping me to understand how one learns to read, starting at the very simplest concept, how a speech sound matches up with a letter. I remember asking myself, how could it be that I did not learn this in college? This is a common story for thousands of teachers across Michigan and the U.S., even today. The disconnect between what cognitive science knows about how humans learn to read and the teaching strategy educators are taught to use in classrooms is huge. Science has told us for years that a structured approach that is explicit, sequential, and systematic is the most effective approach to teach reading. Once known as phonics, this systematic approach has been found to be the best way to teach the foundations of reading to all children. For the 60% that are more challenged, especially those with dyslexia, the approach is crucial for their success. I spent almost 30 years using this structured literacy approach with students from kindergarten to adults, and I'm so proud of Henri and Dion. They're 2 of my students, and they work so hard to be able to come up here and to read that to you. You have no idea. I had a 5th grader who had given up on learning to read, moved 2 grade levels in 1 year once he figured out how the code worked.
I had a 40-year-old at Lansing Community College who was reading in a 3rd grade reading level, and he moved 2 grade levels in a semester after he was taught how to unlock the code of our language that had confused him for so many years. Even today, as a retired teacher, I work as a private tutor to help children learn to read, although there are so many families I must turn away because I just don't have openings for them. The need for change is urgent. It's time for you to be bold. Make sure screening assessments find the kids that need support. Make sure that rather than thinking this can be solved with a Band-Aid approach of sending more money to ISDs and just train more literacy coaches, that we're making sure every teacher in every classroom that teaches reading is empowered with this knowledge on how to teach reading. Make sure that no matter where a child lives, they're guaranteed that instruction is evidence-based and proven to be effective. And make sure teachers know how to support children that have the characteristics of dyslexia. And of course, make sure our teacher preparation programs are required to give future teachers the knowledge they need. I witnessed the need at the university level more than several months ago as a guest speaker in a college classroom where mostly seniors that were soon to be working with learning disabled students were. I was explaining to them about the legislation and started asking them about their knowledge of structured literacy, how the reading brain works, and dyslexia. Students knew very little and expressed their lack of training in teaching reading based on the science. One student, a sophomore, did raise her hand and said she had taken a class where she learned about dyslexia, and we briefly discussed all she had learned. Others in the class were shocked and aggravated. They expressed their frustration that they would soon be hired in a classroom and not been given much guidance in actually teaching reading. They were desperate to find out where they could get this training. SB 567 and 568 will finally give clarity and teeth to the 3rd grade reading law, so real change can happen across Michigan, so all children will actually be taught to read based on science. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we have one last second. Okay, they're coming in again, so. Okay, we have 2 more speakers that wish to speak. Wishing to speak supporting the bill on Zoom, Paula Pulter. Oh, nope, sorry, that one's not. Sorry, Mike Haynes. I'm not sure what Shar MISD is. Shar MISD. Shar MISD, okay.
Mike Haynes, sorry.
Whenever you're ready.
Chair Colzar and members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Mike Haynes, and I'm the Director of Instructional Services at the Charlevoix-Emmett Intermediate School District. For context, I've been an educator for 30 years. I've been a teacher, principal, pre-K through 12 superintendent, and spent 10 years leading an educational service agency in Wisconsin. My comments today are driven by my desire to address learning barriers from a systems lens in a way that is empowering, calls in all stakeholders, acknowledges that every school and community is unique, and recognizes that a one-size-fits-all approach is seldom works. It's important to me, my colleagues, and the stakeholders that I represent that you know we are all committed to ensuring that every child in our state receives the support they need to succeed in school and in life. And to be clear, while I am opposed to the restrictive language in this bill, I fully support its intent. Being able to read is crucial in order to participate fully in society. It opens doors, fosters a sense of confidence, independence, and belonging. But for those who struggle with reading, the barriers to success can seem insurmountable, leading to frustration, low self-esteem, and limited opportunities. I recognize the dedication behind and effort behind this bill, and I'm here to share ways it might be refined in order to achieve the intended outcomes. I think you'll find from my comments that I'm committed to supporting policy that calls everyone in because of a clear why and is written in a way that is empowering for those who are charged with its implementation. So first, I would ask that you remove any question as to who district-identified coaches are. Instead, I ask that district-identified literacy coach be replaced with reading specialist or interventionist or silent and allow each LEA to determine who will carry out work prescribed. Second, I would ask that you remove the requirement to screen students 3 times a year and replace it with language that provides each LEA the latitude to implement strategies that best fit their unique needs and circumstances. We already have a law, Read by Grade 3, that requires diagnostic assessments 3 times a year. Now, I know there's been some discussion that the dyslexia screener will simply replace the existing assessments. However, layering another highly prescriptive law on top of existing laws that are intended to ensure that all students can read is a duplication of efforts and will cause unnecessary confusion as schools expend energy navigating multiple laws versus solving the problem. We've also not seen any research suggesting that prescribing a specific number of screenings is effective. In fact, there is research that suggests excessive screening for dyslexia can lead to high rates of false positives and false negatives, causing misidentification and unnecessary allocation of resources. Now, these two recommendations are irrelevant if you would consider my third recommendation. There is a need at times for states to establish baseline standards to ensure that all students, regardless of their location, have equitable learning environments. However, there is also a line between mandates that are positive for everyone versus those that disrupt systems that are already in place and already accomplishing the same objective. This bill is explicit on how schools will address reading deficiencies, yet it is silent regarding what the actual outcomes will be. As a result, as previous testimonies have asserted, questions have been raised about whether implementing the requirements in the bill will have the intended impact, or if they will divert attention and resources from solving the real problem. There's actually a body of research that suggests the negative effects of overly prescriptive regulations. So instead of telling an industry how to solve a problem, lawmakers should define the outcome and allow industries to devise their own solution. Our pre-K education system, which is filled with highly trained experts on the science of learning, is no different than other industries in which determining how to solve a problem is more effective when it's left in the hands of the people closest to it. So as a result, I ask that you empower schools to create solutions and systems to meet their unique needs. I would ask that you be explicit about the outcomes and task LEAs and ISDs to determine how to accomplish those objectives. I've not heard anyone oppose identifying and supporting students who are not reading proficiently. If this committee is willing, I, as well as other colleagues and experts across the state, would be eager to help draft an outcomes-based bill that captures the same intended impact, demonstrates the legislature's commitment to this issue, and is embraced by the people who will be charged with its implementation. So rather than continue to debate, which chips away at our credibility to work together on behalf of students, we have an opportunity to demonstrate that we are all unified in our commitment to ensure that no Michigander is opportunity limited because they cannot read. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thank you. Any members have questions? Representative Wagella.
Hi, thank you for your testimony today. As we've heard testimony, we've heard that superintendents are opposed to these bills, is my understanding. I've heard that the school boards are opposed to these bills. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having buy-in from, the people who run our education system on legislation that we pass through these chambers?
Well, like many of the folks that you've heard from, they like I know schools. We know how schools work. We know how resources are allocated. And we know that inspiring people to accomplish a task is far more effective than issuing mandates. So from that perspective, I would suggest that this would be more effective if the bill was based on outcomes and districts had some latitude to determine how to reach that. Hold us accountable. Tell us what you want to see at the end of the day, and then make sure schools are accountable to that, but allow us to choose the strategies that best fit our local context. That's what I think most of the other folks that you've heard from, especially school administrators, are coming from.
Okay, any other questions? Representative Churches.
That just made me think, I just wonder, to hold schools accountable, which is important, if this was, how do I say this? Why wouldn't schools already be doing and meeting the needs of this population of students?
I would say a lot of schools are.
If you're saying we don't need this, then, the bill is here because we're trying to meet the needs of this certain population. And you're saying we don't need it because schools can do it, but why aren't schools already doing it?
I would say that the steps that are prescribed in this bill are so prescriptive, and as you've heard before, there are a number of reasons why some folks believe it would not be effective. So rather than that, I would suggest that you give us the opportunity to come together to allow ISDs, LEAs, to MDE to work together to create a bill that we all believe can be implemented with fidelity. I'm not sure if that quite answered your question, but perhaps restate that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, keep in mind, there have been changes to the bill too. I do believe that saying that you only have to be trained in one method is no longer accurate, is my understanding of the bill. So I do believe that to be an accurate statement that I did want to clarify as well. All right, we have our final testifier coming up. It is Paula Pulter, a retired, did I say that right? Wonderful. Paula Pulter, a retired teacher representing the Michigan Dyslexia Institute.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I didn't know if I would even have the nerve to turn in a card, but I am coming to you on a heartfelt, emotional basis, not citing the bill. To be honest, I don't know everything that's in the bill. I haven't read the entire bill, but I do want to give you a little background and come from the teacher perspective. I got my degree in learning disabilities and elementary education in 1981 from Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. From there, I got a job teaching in a private Christian school in Oklahoma City for 11 years. The curriculum there was highly phonetic. I was a new teacher. I didn't know what else to do. It even told you, and I am not joking, when to give your kids a restroom break, okay? That's how it was. It was a Becca out of Florida. I taught second grade there and pre-kindergarten. While I was there in 1984, I also had the opportunity to take a class called Alphabetic Phonics, which is Orton Gillingham based. It was written by Ailette Cox out of the Texas Scottish Rite Hospital. Ailette Cox was actually my instructor. It was a 4-week, 120-hour course that I took in the summer of 1984. I went back to school that year. I had a student that I tutored, but I still had this very prescriptive phonetic program that I was following, so there were things about what I learned that I tried to incorporate into my classroom. But remember, I was a new teacher, and I'm just like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and so this is what I did. In 1997, I moved to the state of Michigan. In 1999, I got a job in a local public school district teaching first grade. Upon arrival, I was given a red 3-ring binder that said, here is your language arts curriculum. Here are the things that you were supposed to teach. And it was literally page after page of just, teach them this, teach them that. There was nothing that said, teach them short vowels, teach them long vowels, teach them patterns. I was lost, as well as the other 3 teachers that I was teaching first grade with. I stayed there. Eventually, the district did decide it was important for us to have a curriculum. So we had, in my time at this district, for 20 years, we did have 2 literacy curriculums. But I was still frustrated with them, one of which I was on the committee to choose, because it really didn't tell us how to teach reading. In 2001, I decided to go to Michigan State to get my master's in literacy instruction, thinking, okay, this will help me be a better literacy teacher. I learned great things, wonderful strategies, but I left in 2005 going, but how do I teach reading? I still didn't know. Finished my years. I graduated in 2019. At that time, the pandemic and all that happened. In 2021, I went back to my same district working in my same school, working as an interventionist with kids that were struggling with reading. In the fall of 2022, our district, through the grant from Michigan, we were offered the chance to take the Orton Gillingham training, and I jumped on that. Went through the Orton Gillingham training through Michigan Dyslexia Institute, and finally went, so this is how you do it. Went back, was working with small groups. Long story short, last fall I had to have surgery. And while I was after my surgery, I had started the summer of 2023. I was looking for a part-time job, and I called Marsha Chance at MDI. We actually taught in the same district, and I had known her for years, saying, hey, do you need a tutor at MDI? She goes, yes. So I went down there and started tutoring. In September, I had surgery, and I was really reflecting on what I wanted to do. As a retired person, I know I have to hurry. As a retired teacher, I knew that I wasn't done. I wanted to do something to make a difference. So I started tutoring at Michigan Dyslexia Institute. In September, I decided not to go back to my school and be an interventionist, and I've been working at MDI since then. And I want to tell you, teaching the students that I work with, this science of reading is good for every student, not just those with dyslexia. And in all of this talk, I was here last week too, and I heard administrators, people talk about the naysayers. Well, what about this and what about that, and implementing and all this stuff. And I know that there are challenges, but this is my plea to you. What about the kids? Because when I heard about the science of reading, I was in tears. And I went back to one of my former cohorts that I taught school with. And I said, how many years did we fail?
Yeah,
kids?
I'm sorry, that is the 5-minute time limit. Are there any questions from members? Okay, and we are just about at time, so thank you very much. And there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.